Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Teddy Wilson once again. We are going to be having Jeff Benner with us as a special guest this evening, and I'm sure most of you are well aware of the topic, the use of the pronunciation of Yahuah towards the Creator's name. This is Restoring Our Hebrew Mind, live from Seekers of Yahweh Ministries here in Craigmont, Idaho. And once again, it's just an honor to have Jeff with us, and we use a lot of Jeff's material here, so it's always an honor and a privilege to have him come on the program and to enlighten us. It's just such a big thing when we start getting into these ancient Hebrew hieroglyphics. Some of the things that we can see pertaining to our English Bibles or the set of scriptures that you have in front of you. There's a lot more to it that meets the eye. So this evening, I've already sent most of you who are watching the program that are part of the website. I've already sent out the attachment to everyone, so you'll have that there with you already on your computer, and you'll be able to follow through step by step with what Jeff is speaking about. A lot of information, and we do certainly want to bring honor to our King's name. And this is not meant in any way, shape, or form to attack anyone who may be using the pronunciation of Yahuah. This is not what it's about. But there are those that are attacking the use of Yahweh. So every now and then, and I've had a lot of questions lately, and it seems to be kind of repetitive about, there was no W pronunciation in the ancient Hebrew. I disagree, and I do believe that Jeff also disagrees. And maybe we can get him to touch on that tonight as well. So I'm going to be attacking some of the English dogma concerning this reasoning this evening on the board behind me. And so I'm going to stick strictly to English, which we need to remember something. In the days of Moshe, there was no such thing as an English alphabet. So if we're going to use English dogma, or theology to try to prove or disprove the Creator's name, was it a U, a V, a W? Probably very, I would say, useless at this point to try to use the history of the English language to prove the pronunciation of the Father's name. Certainly, we want to give all of the praise and all of the honor due our King. We want to make sure that he receives all of the honor and all of the glory. Every word here is meant to lift him up in his kingdom and his purpose, and to draw all of us nearer to him. It's not about us or who knows more. It's about actually seeking through all of this so that we can get closer to him. And we certainly want to worship him in spirit and in truth. And in the deep study of the language, I believe it helps us draw closer to him, along with the history and archaeology and anthropology and everything behind it. So we want to make sure that Yahweh is exalted this evening. So let's go ahead and pray in, and then we'll go over a few things, and then we'll let Jeff go ahead and get to his presentation. Heavenly Father, great King, our Melech Tzaddik, we worship you. As we enter into your Shabbat, we lift up your holy name. And we thank you so much for the blood of the covenant. As we begin to study your word, we ask that you would give us eyes to hear, eyes to see and ears to hear everything that you wish for us to learn this evening, Father, and to you be the glory for that. We pray that everything here would be pleasing to you. And Father, we just want to say that we love you so much, and we thank you for your mitzvot, your commands, your Torot, your instructions. And we thank you so much certainly for the manifestation of your word, which redeemed us, your son, the Ben, the seed that came from the house. We thank you so much for that. Give us the strength and the ability to walk in his footsteps, Father. And as we enter into your word, we praise your name. And we pray this in the name of Yahshua Messiah. Hallelujah. Yeah. Okay, I want to thank everybody first off for all of your comments on the teaching that I just did on head coverings. And many of you have sent there's only been actually 2 negative things that were said about the teaching. And we have had literally maybe 50 or 60 just in the matter of 3 or 4 days since I posted that, I want to thank you for all the positive feedback. And I've also been encouraged by some here and others that have sent in emails to go ahead and address this modesty issue, because as we get into this new age thing, we're starting to see a lot of people not dressed correctly, not representing our king in a fashion that or in a manner that would exalt him, and we're really not covering ourselves properly in many cases. So I will be doing that, but remember, once again, I'm not going to have any Christian dogma involved here. I'm going to use the scriptures and the Hebrew language to show you all of the instances where modesty is brought up throughout the law and the prophets. And it's there. So they would have not been teaching, just as in the head covering teaching. Shaul was thinking of the Hebrew word for head, the Hebrew word for uncovered, and the Hebrew word for covering when he said what he said to Corinth. He had those definitions in his mind. And us sticking to those definitions throughout that study helped us understand better what he would have been conveying to the assembly in Corinth. So I'm going to use the same format to do that, and so you guys can be looking forward to that in the future. Also, we are going to start recording on the Tarot. Got a lot of information on that compiled, and after I speak with Brad Scott, he's supposed to be coming through here soon, and we're going to sit down and table everything that we have about extra biblical books and the Tarot and how it's all tied together and relevant. So please just give me time. We are not dragging our feet. It's just going to take us a while to get everything on the table and get things compiled into a PowerPoint. Okay. You can join us tomorrow morning for Sabbath Live. Just go to the Seekers of Yahweh Ministry Facebook page, and at 11 a.m. and you'll see the link there, and you can join us with a live worship. The topic will be the bride, the law, and the prophets, how they are all connected. Okay, so what we're going to do this evening, since we got started a little bit late, I'm going to save all the prayers and everything. If anybody wants to make a comment or needs prayer, we're going to save that for the end. And so let's go ahead and turn things over to Jeff. Jeff, thank you for being with us. It's such an honor to have you, brother. And please go ahead and let everybody know exactly what we're going to be touching on this evening.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting me again. It's always a pleasure to be here with you and your group. We're going to be talking about the pronunciation of the name Yahweh. We've talked about it before. We're going to kind of look at some slightly different issues, but I would like to first preface this with my perspective on using the name. Now, there are many people that use Yahweh, some Jehovah, some Yahuah. In my opinion, when the Bible talks about the name of God, it's talking about the character, not the specific pronunciation of the name. I believe that the pronunciation is a secondary issue. The primary issue would be the character of Yahweh. Are you living according to the character of Yahweh? And there are many verses in the Bible to support this. For example, the Aaronic blessing. I find this very interesting. After the Kohanim pronounced the name or the blessing, Yevarechecha vayishmerecha, may the Lord bless you and keep you. The next verse after that says that they are to place his name upon the people. Now, you can't literally place the name upon the people, but it is talking about the character. Take the character of Yahweh and place it on the people. And that is what the Aaronic blessing is about, the character of Yahweh. So whether you use Yahuah or Yahweh or whatever, you do what you can with what you have. Now, I have a personal opinion on what the pronunciation is, but I won't normally use that because nobody would be familiar with it. That, by the way, is Yahweh. If I mentioned Yahweh, most people wouldn't even know what I'm talking about. So out of convenience, when I'm speaking, I use usually Yahweh. So the first thing I want to do is point out, how do we know how Hebrew is pronounced? You know, any word, whether it's Yahweh or even the first verse in the Bible, Bereshith bara Elohim et hashemayim ve'et haaretz. How do we know how that is pronounced? Well, there's several different things that come into play here. And the first one is tradition. We only know how Hebrew is pronounced based on solely tradition. That's all we have. The Jews have been pronouncing Hebrew for millennia. But we do know that pronunciations change over time. I mean, look at English. The letter J we were just talking about a minute ago is pronounced with a J. Like my name is Jeff, so it's a J sound. However, originally the letter J represented the Y sound. And so in English, letter pronunciations do change over time, and I'm sure that in Hebrew that is also the case. However, we cannot deny the traditions of the Jewish people in the pronunciation of Hebrew. I put a lot of weight on their traditions. Secondly, the Septuagint. The Septuagint is a 2,000-year-old Greek translation of the Old Testament, and they translate the Hebrew, however, they transliterate names. So, like, for example, Adam in Hebrew, Aleph, Dalet, Mem. In Greek, it's Alpha, Delta, Alpha, Mu. Okay, and it's pronounced Adam. It's the same. Baal is Baal in Hebrew, and when it's translated into Greek, it's Baal. So this 2,000-year-old document gives us a glimpse of how the Jews who did the Septuagint, how they pronounce the Hebrew words, because they would then take the Greek letters and swap them for the Hebrew letters. However, the slight problem is that Greek doesn't always have the same letters that Hebrew does, such as the Wa. The sixth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, there is no equivalent in Greek anymore. There used to be a letter called the Wa. Greek did have the letter Wa, and it was pronounced with a W, but that letter fell into disuse and stopped being used millennia ago. So it's not in the modern Greek. One other thing, and I don't have this in the handout, the third thing that we use to determine the pronunciation of Hebrew is other related Semitic languages. For example, Arabic. Arabic has the same alphabet as Hebrew, slightly different. It actually has more letters, but it's almost identical to Hebrew, and it has the letter Wa, which, by the way, is a W sound, not a V sound. Aramaic uses the same alphabet as Hebrew. It has a Wa, not a Vav, a Wa. So Aramaic also uses the W sound. Some other, the Yemenite Hebrew, the different dialects of Hebrew, we can compare. Yemenite Hebrew, they use a Wa, not a Vav. So we use all of these, the tradition, the transliterations in the Septuagint, the different Semitic languages, to help us to determine how the ancient Hebrew was pronounced in contrast to modern Hebrew. Now, the importance of deciphering Hebrew syllables. In English, if you take a word like circle, you have a consonant, a vowel, a consonant, a consonant, a consonant, and a vowel. And in English, we can have any number of, we can have words that are all vowels or all, well, I don't think you can have all consonants. Can you? No, I don't think you can. But we have no set standard on how consonants and vowels are related to or set up in words. Hebrew is much simpler, very simple. Consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel. Whether it's 2 letters or 7 letters, it's going to be consonant, vowel, which makes pronouncing Hebrew very nice and very easy because it's very simple. So if we take a name like Metushelach, now in English, that's going to be it's going to have vowel, vowel, consonant, consonant, because it doesn't always represent the letters. But in Hebrew, Metushelach is mem, and then the vowel, then the tav, consonant, then a vowel, u, then a consonant, sh, and then a vowel, lamed, vowel, and then chet. So it's consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant. And Hebrews are pretty precise in how they arrange these syllables. And for the most part, now there are some exceptions to this, but for the most part, Hebrew likes to have a closed syllable at the end of the word. What I mean by a closed syllable is an open syllable would be consonant vowel. Okay, like meh, M-E, that's an open syllable. The final syllable in matushalach is lach, consonant vowel consonant. That's a closed syllable. So Hebrew likes to have a closed syllable at the end. Now it can also have closed syllables in the word, or it can have open syllables. In the case of matushalach, it's open syllable, open syllable, open syllable, closed syllable. And that's the way that most Hebrew words are going to be configured. Now, by the way, the metu in matushalach, the u, is the letter vav. And it is pronounced as a vowel in this case, metushalach. Elohim, again, consonant vowel, consonant vowel, consonant vowel, consonant. So it's open syllable, closed syllable. Elohim. Now, in English, when we write this, it's E-L, and it looks like it's vowel consonant. But what we forget is that the aleph is there in the Hebrew, and that's a consonant, and it's silent. And so it's aleph, which is silent, then an E, then an L. So it's Elohim, and that final syllable is a closed syllable. Midbar is the wilderness. Now, in this case, we have two closed syllables, mid, M-I-D, bar, B-A-R. So it's consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant. Again, a closed syllable at the end of the word. But notice that I said earlier that it's always consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel. In this word, it's consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant. We're missing a vowel. Well, actually, there's a vowel there. It's called the shva, and it's silent. So it's just simply mid, and then there's the shva, which is silent, bar, mid bar. So it's still consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, but the syllables are set up consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant. Okay. Menorah, the lampstand in the tabernacle. Me, no, ra. Consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant. Dawid. Oh, by the way, something I want to mention, Elohim. This is just kind of a side note. In the Masoretic Hebrew text, that's spelled Aleph, Lamed, He, Yod, Mem. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's spelled differently. The word Elohim is spelled differently than in the Masoretic text. It's Aleph, Lamed, Vav, He, Yod, Mem. The Vav is there to represent the O sound. The Masoretic text has that Vav removed, and there's a dot there for the O sound. How that happened, I don't know. It's a mystery. From 2,000 years ago, the Dead Sea Scrolls, they used the Vav and the Yod a lot for vowels. And then when we come to the Masoretic text 1,000 years later, those vowels are moved. They're gone. They're missing. I don't know what happened. I've been trying to find an answer to that, but no success. Anyway, Dawid is consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant. Dawid. So the Vav in this case is being used as a consonant, not a vowel. Why? Because it needs to have that closed syllable at the end. If we use the Vav as a vowel, then it would be, well, I don't even know how you would, yad would be the way to pronounce that. But it cannot, the vowel cannot be at the end on the closed syllable. It has to be a consonant. It can't be a vowel in this case. And this is important when we get to the name Yahweh. Okay. Changes in pronunciation based on grammar and relationships. This is very important. This is something that's not understood by people that don't know Hebrew. Is depending on how a letter is placed in a word or a sentence is going to determine how it's pronounced, and also the context. The first example I have in the handout is Bet Nun Yod. Now, this can be pronounced three different ways. Beni, which means my son. B'nai, which means sons of something or someone. Or B'nai, which is my sons, plural. It's spelled the same. Bet, nun, yod. All three of those are spelled the same, but the different vowels that are attached to it changes the meaning. So this is just to demonstrate that based on the vowels can have an effect on how you translate a word. Adoni, or Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yod. This can be Adoni, which means my Lord, Adonai, which means lords of, or Adonai, which means my lords, plural. The next one here I have is out of Genesis 12, verse 15. And the word Pharaoh appears twice in that verse. In the first time, the context is Sari Pharaoh. So here we have the word Pharaoh, and it's consonant, vowel, consonant. Let's see, consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant. Far is the first closed syllable, and then O is the second closed syllable. And it is closed, even though it's just OH, but there's an I in there, which is silent. So it's a consonant, even though it's silent. But it's still a closed syllable. Now, the next one is El Paro. Paro. The letter P can have two pronunciations, either a P, like a P, or a F, like an F. And that is going to be dependent on the relationship that that letter is with other letters. If the P follows a vowel sound, it takes the F sound. If it follows a consonant or has nothing before it, then it takes a P sound. So in Sari, Pharaoh, the E in Sari, which means my prince, okay, or my ruler. So Sari, Pharaoh means my ruler is Pharaoh. But the E is a vowel, so the P takes the F sound. In El Paro, the L is a consonant which precedes the P, so it takes a P sound. So this is just to demonstrate that what most people don't realize is that Hebrew pronunciation is going to change based on context and its relationship with other letters, and also with its relationship with syllables. If the vav is going to be in the middle of a syllable, it takes a vowel sound. If it's going to be at the beginning of a syllable, it's going to take a consonant sound. Okay? All right. Have I lost everybody already, or is this all make sense? Is it making sense?
No, it's actually covering a bunch of bases that I was hoping that you would, without it, because we haven't talked since we decided to do the program. And Jeff, the reason why everything started late is because Jeff had a problem getting logged in. So no, it's working out just fine.
Okay.
And also what I would like to point out before Jeff goes on is that we're dealing with what concept, modern Hebrew concepts, to try to get back to the, as close as possible, original pronunciations that would have been spoken in the ancient times. And so we have to sift through many different grammatical rules. I mean, it's not just that somebody can magically come out of the hat with some new way to figure out the name. Just like we do the etymology of a word, we also must do the etymology of the change of the language. And if we don't use that process, next year it might be Yahuah, Yahweh. I mean, honestly, you're going to come up with all kinds of just, and like I was saying, before I get on a tangent, Yahweh or Jehovah, but Jehovah's probably been longing standard, well, maybe not longer, but these other pronunciations that we have disproven by historical facts and the Hebrew language, it's the same way. We got to use the same grammatical rules that we disproved Jehovah to prove or disprove what we're trying to pronounce the name as now. We can't come up with a new set of rules for the Hebrew grammar, because then we're going to take out the stepping stones back to the Ancient of Days. We've got to use them to get back to the ancient language. We have to use them.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing that you brought up that is also important is that these consonant vowel relationships that I'm speaking about are in modern Hebrew. The question is ancient Hebrew. And that's where it's helpful. Yeah, go ahead. What?
And that's one of the things I've been touching on as of lately with the people that are taking our Hebrew class. I believe that even if it was not used for syllable, and I want you to touch on the purpose of an index as well after you get done with your study, Jeff. But because what we have, well, let's touch on the index later. But what I'm saying is, if a certain letter or a certain group of ancient letters were used to make a sound for a personal noun or a noun in general, depending on what other letters they were used around, would have been the grammatical rules of the letter. They may not have pronounced certain letters, just like the vowel point system has done. They've taken out certain letters because that vowel point now takes the place of a letter that they would have used pre-Masorite. So we've got to go through, we've got to sift through a lot of evidence before we can use English theology and grammar to try to prove or disprove the W. And I mean, we've got all kinds of new comments on where all this started back there on Nehemiah's page. There's all kind, I mean, it's never ending. I get stuff all the time. But I do pray that when we understand the open end and closed end of a vowel structure, or the structure of a word, this is going to, it has to lay to rest certain pronunciations as just not being feasible, and just move on past that. And if people choose to use those pronunciations, I'm not coming against the people, but I do want to prove or try to produce evidence that would prove that we can get closer to the original pronunciation of the name if we use these grammatical rules of Hebrew and go back upstream from modern Hebrew.
Got to turn my mic on before I talk, huh? Okay. Can you write on the whiteboard back there? Let's take a look at a word that we looked at before, menorah. Yeah. What? No, it's going to be in English.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be English. M-E, type, or write M-E dash N-O-R dash A-H. Now, this is how we in English pronounce menorah, menorah. Because in English, we like to put the closed syllable in the second to the last word. Not always, but most of the time. We like to put the closed syllable in the second to the last syllable. So we would pronounce this menorah. But in Hebrew, take that R and put it over in front of the H, the A. In Hebrew, there you go, exactly. Yep. Because Hebrew wants a closed syllable at the end, it's menorah. The same with Torah. We like to say Torah, T-O-R, write down T-O-R-A-H. That's how we say Torah, Torah. But in Hebrew, it's got to have a closed syllable. So you move that R over to the A, and it becomes Torah. That's a better pronunciation to Hebrew. So that's just a side thing when you're pronouncing Hebrew. Just remember to put that closed syllable at the end. Now, there are exceptions to this. This isn't a hard and fast rule, but I would say about 95% of the time, the words are going to have this closed syllable at the end. Yes?
Jeff, what is the original, or to your knowledge, what would be the original letters? How many letters anciently would have been used to spell menorah?
4.
Mem?
Okay.
4,
well, probably 5. In the Masoretic text, it's 4. Mem, Nun, Resh, He. However, I have not looked at this, but I would bet a lot on the fact that there was probably a Vav in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Mem, Nun, Vav, Resh, He. I can't confirm that, but I'm pretty certain it is. Okay. All right. So this is just to point out that in English, we like to have the closed syllable second to the last syllable. Hebrew likes to have it at the end of this, at the last syllable. So now let's move on to the consonants and vowels in the name Yahweh. Yod He Vav He. Yod He Wah He. Okay, let's start with the Yehuda and trying to extract Yahuah out there. Go ahead and write Yahuda. Yahuda. Yah, Y-A, syllable, break. Okay, actually move that H closer to the U. Okay, so what we have here is, okay, notice we have first an open syllable, Yah, another open syllable, Hu, and then a closed syllable, Da. Perfect. That's how you pronounce it in Hebrew. Yahuda. Yahuda. Now, what people are trying to do is remove the dalet. Now, remove the D. And what they're saying is, look, we have the name, Yod He Vav He, Yahuah, because that's how Yehuda is pronounced. But notice, what do we have at the end there? An open syllable. It don't work. So you have to move the U over, but
then it's not a vowel sound anymore, it's a consonant.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. It becomes a W. It has to be a W. It can't be an U. Now we have a H all by itself. Okay? So move the H over. Now we have a closed syllable and a closed syllable. That's perfect Hebrew. Is that how it's pronounced? I can't say for sure. Another option is now erase the H, put a syllable break there. Okay. So now write HX. Now that X is going to represent another vowel. Put another syllable break there. So now what we have is a open syllable, closed syllable. That's also perfectly legitimate in Hebrew. Now that may be Yah, Yahweh, or Yahweh, or even change the A to an E. It could be Yehuah. Those are possibilities based on the syllables that are required in the Hebrew language. So just by removing the dalet, you can't say, voila, there's the name, because once you do that, then the letters are all rearranged, and you then have to come up with a new pronunciation based on its configuration. Yeah, go ahead, Teddy.
Something very important that Jeff just pointed out. Yehuda and the Tetragrammaton do not come from the same root line.
That's right.
You cannot. Okay, if you say Yehuda possesses the pronunciation of the Father's name, and you removing the dalit out of it, squeeze it together, and you come up with Yahuah, that is totally impossible.
Exactly.
The root line is number 1961 for the Tetragrammaton, and Yada is the root line for Yehuda. Now, and for the same reason that I believe the A it's not commonly left standing, it would be changed to an E pronunciation because of the word, when we went over this last time, Hova. We can't have that in the pronunciation of the name, or we've just said Yah ruined. I mean, it would just be wrong, totally wrong to do that. So if you change and I've seen other grammatical things where they actually would change the E's to, or A's to an E, or where there was an A, where there should be an A, there was an E. And on the opposite end, there would be an E where there should have been an A, or vice versa.
Right.
So it's very important that we understand that those two words, Yehuda and Eyah, Yada is the root word for Judah, okay, right. And Eyah is the root line for the Tetragrammaton. So that would be like me saying, Jeff, I'm going to be billing you for the work I did. And then when Jeff got the paper, he took the ing off of it and said, now it's going to mean the name Bill. English grammatics won't even allow that.
Yes,
totally
that's right.
Different things.
Right. Very good point. Very good point. Okay. All right. So now let's take a look at Yeshua. Okay. Yeshua. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Put them right there. Yeah. No, wait a minute. It's going to have to be shu and then ah. Put the U next to the H. Yes, right there. And then A. Okay, now this is going to be one of those. Actually, put an H on the end at the after the A. All right, what we have here is YE is yeah, that's an open syllable. Shu, that's an open syllable. Then we have AH. Now that may look like an open syllable. It's actually a closed syllable because there's an I in there. The letter I in is silent, but it's still a consonant. So it's still a closed syllable. Now, this is the Hebrew word for salvation, Yeshua, with a hey at the end. Now, remove the H. Yeah, remove that H. All right, now this is the name Yeshua. It has an open syllable at the end. This is an exception. However, this is not a Hebrew name. This is an Aramaic name. This is the Aramaic form of Yehoshua, which also, by the way, is going to be an open syllable. Now, this is one of those, when you have an ayin, there's oftentimes going to be an open syllable at the end. That's one of the exceptions. Anytime you're dealing with the letter ayin, you'll oftentimes have an open syllable. Okay, so that's all I wanted to use that name, just simply to demonstrate these syllables in the name. Go ahead.
Just quickly, I wanted to ask you a question before we moved from, I believe in your lexicon, you actually have Yeshua as a generic verb. Is that?
Yasha.
Yeah.
The verb Yasha.
And yes, and that's the root of.
Yes, okay. Exactly.
All right.
Yes, exactly. I call them generic words because they can be used in a wide application. Natan means to give, but it can mean to place or to send, or, it can be used in a wide variety of ways. There's about 5 or 6 of these verbs that are just really difficult to translate because they have such a wide variety of usages. Okay, now let's take a look at Adamah. And I'm trying to remember why I'm using this one as an example. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, put an apostrophe in front of the A. An apostrophe in front of the A. Yeah. Okay, now another apostrophe. Then DA, apostrophe, MAH. Now in Hebrew, the first letter is an aleph. And so that's what that first apostrophe represents. So it's actually a consonant vowel. Ah, aleph with the ah vowel sound. Then we have da, another open syllable. That's dalet. And then we have a closed syllable, ma. Now that's the Hebrew word for ground, adamah. Now remove the AH at the end. Okay, now what word is that? What word is that? What word?
It's Adam.
Adam, exactly. But because we've removed one letter, the hey, we have to rearrange everything. So now it becomes Adam. Remove the third apostrophe. Right. Yeah, right there. So now we have a closed syllable. Remember, we've got to have a closed syllable at the end. So it's Adam. So this is just to demonstrate that, once again, if you change a letter, it's going to change how you're going to pronounce the syllables. Okay. All right. Now let's take a look at Yahuah. Y-A. Apostrophe. H-U. Apostrophe A-H. And you can already see right off the bat that this is not kosher. Because, and we've already we already did this. We have to move the vav over to the W, over to the ah, and make it a consonant, wa. So this is just to demonstrate that Yahuah doesn't follow the syllable rules in Hebrew. However, I will preface this with, we do not know for sure how they dealt with the syllables in ancient times. Now, we can use the Septuagint to examine it and get some ideas, but we don't know for sure. So now we have Yahuah, or we could, of course, change the A's to an E, and we have Yahweh, which is a very acceptable pronunciation. Whether it's correct or not, we don't know. I personally don't think so. Go ahead, Teddy. Go ahead.
Many of you that are watching right now I've been poring over. That's why I asked you earlier if that was a 4-letter word in modern Hebrew.
Okay.
Okay, because I've been poring over 4-letter words in modern Hebrew, and what I'm coming to find is that many of them are 2-syllable words.
Yes. Yes.
And so when I seen an older teaching of you doing something, some years back, and it hit me. Well, when I get into the English part here, I'll show everybody what my qualm is. But for the most part, when we go through these grammatical rules, we end up with a 2-syllable pronunciation here.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can do this several different ways, but in the end, you can even use other words well, and I would also like to add that if you're using a Strong's, and it's my humble opinion that almost every personal noun in there is mistranslated. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. Well, Strong's was written in support of the King James Version. And so its pronunciations of like the names they're going to try and make it what is in the King James Bible. That's kind of a known fact. And that's one of the problems with Strong's. It more justifies the King James translation than any other translation. Still a great tool. Don't get me wrong. Love it. It's a great resource, but you have to know the limitations of Strong's. Go ahead. Sorry.
Right. No, that's fine. I usually make sure that everybody knows when you're using the Strong's, because it's where we begin our word study. If you're using the Strong's and you see this semicolon, everything after that, you might as well not even really pay attention to it. And you want to focus on everything prior to that that's in italics, because what you're going to see is a more, at least abstract, proper definition. If you can use an abstract definition to mean anything, those are the ones you want to focus on, are those that are in italics. And it's not just having the books. I mean, we have people in this room that have used this thing so much that the cover's fallen off of it.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not even kidding.
My copy's not even that bad.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, everybody in this room has one.
Wow.
So
cool. Thank you.
Well, absolutely. This is the most critical tool that we can use to get back to the ancient Hebrew lexicon. I mean, Klein is a great work. Don't get me wrong. I use it often. But Jeff's book it brings an in-depth meaning behind each letter that no other lexicon on the planet has the ability to do. And I praise Yahweh for Jeff's. And I don't even believe, Jeff, this wasn't your intent was to make a book out of that. This was just
originally, no.
Right.
Originally, it was my own dictionary when I was learning Hebrew. I was just compiling root words together and compiling kind of a dictionary for myself. And I just started noticing things as I was compiling these words. I just noticed how, well, these have the same 2 letters as this word, and they mean almost the same thing. That's weird, because Strong's doesn't really tell you that. And at that time, I haven't even heard of Brown Driver Briggs or Gesenius. All I had was Strong's. And so I started noticing these patterns in the language. And then when I got into the pictographs, that opened up, well, as you all are aware of, a whole new world. But the bottom line for me, the main, if I could sum up my whole teaching, it's on understanding the Hebrew language through the culture of the day, whether it's the letters or the words or the sentences. What did that mean to them? A classic example, Isaiah says that Yahweh spread out the heavens like a curtain. Well, what the heck does that mean? It means nothing to us. It means nothing. You know, we just read, oh, that's nice, you know, and we move on. What we don't realize, and most of you are probably familiar with this teaching, I have it in several of my videos and books, is that the Hebrews made their tents out of goat hair, spun goat hair. And there were a lot of pinholes in it. And so if you were sitting in your tent during the day and you look up at the roof, which is black goat hair, by the way, it's black. So it's very dark, but there's pinholes of light. It looks like stars. So if you're in your tent and you look up, you see this tent looks like a covering of stars over you. Well, when you walk outside at night, you see God's tent over us. That's what that verse means, is they saw God's tent over them, protecting them, just like their tent protects their family. You know, that opens up the verse in a way that I'd never seen before. This is incredible. So when you understand it in the culture, it makes a lot more sense, and you retain things a lot better too. That's what I really like about the ancient Hebrew pictures. I can't tell you how many people have sent me emails saying this is great because I'm what's the term? What kind of focus person? A picture oriented. I'm not abstract. I don't like abstracts. I like pictures. Sorry about the dogs. So that's what I love about the Hebrew language. All right, I guess we should move on here.
I think he wants us to look at the definition of roof.
Yeah.
What's the three-letter family root and the two-letter root of that roof?
Yeah, something tells me they're not concerned about it. We have several dogs.
Sounds like it. Okay. Well, it sounds like whatever's outside is some deep trouble.
Yeah. Our
dogs are not afraid to put in work on Sabbath, right? When it comes
no, that's right. Okay. All right. On the board back there, write CV, capital C, small v, and then dash C, V, C. Make all the, well, I guess that's fine. Yeah. Okay. Now, below that, put CV dash CV dash CVC. Now, below that, put CVC dash CVC. There you go. Now these are, notice that there's four, 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. With the first line there on to the right, write YA-HUH. YA-HUH. H-U-H. No. Get rid of the S. Get rid of the S. No S. There you go. Okay. So here what we have is Yahoo. This would be an acceptable transliteration for the name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. It's acceptable because we have a closed syllable at the end, an open syllable at the beginning, and the Vav is taking a vowel sound. That's completely acceptable. Now the one below it, on the second line, put Y-A-H-A and W-A-H. Now here we have again the same four letters, the Y-H-W-H. Now they're after something. Yeah, okay, so here again we have the four letters Y-H-W-H. This is a perfectly acceptable pronunciation according to the Hebrew syllables, Yahuah. Or you can change the vowels for any vowel you want. Okay, Yahweh, Okay, I'm not saying these are the names. I'm just saying these are possibilities. Okay, the third one, YAH, is syllable WAH. Again, another acceptable pronunciation, the YHWH. We're using the rules of the syllables to come up with the pronunciations. This demonstration is just simply to point out what possibilities we can have. We know that Yahuah, based on Yahudah, is not a possibility. That doesn't work. These do. So this would be your starting point when you're trying to figure out the pronunciation. These three possible syllable combinations are what we are starting. Yeah, go ahead, Teddy.
And also, before I forget, I wanted to ask you, but there's also other grammatical rules after you come to this part that must be considered.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mainly based on the word that it means. Now, as most of you I'm sure are aware, every Hebrew name is a Hebrew word. And so Hebrew words follow specific pronunciations. Now, and this is why I believe it's Yahweh, is because the root is Hawa, H-Vav, He-Vav, He, and it means to exist. It's related to He-Yod-He, Hayat, meaning to exist. And the Yod in front is the, identifies the verb, it is a verb, as third person masculine singular. I'll tell you what, erase all that there. Erase all that. And let's take a look at Yahweh real quick and the reason why I believe that is the pronunciation. Okay, type. Can you type on a whiteboard? Have you ever taken a book and tried to make the page bigger? I'll tell you, I got a side note here. When I was learning Hebrew back in the day before computers, I had all my books out, right? I'd have my English Bible, my Hebrew Bible, my dictionary, and my notepad for taking notes. And I'll be reading in the Hebrew, which of course is right to left. And I'll be reading the Hebrew. And then I'll go to the English and I'll be reading it from right to left. Now, that makes no sense. And I'm trying to figure out, why is this English not making, I'm reading it from right to left. You got to read it from left to right. And then I'd go back to the Hebrew and read it from left to right. And when you're going from English to Hebrew, at least back when I was first learning, it was really confusing trying to remember which direction to read English and Hebrew. Anyway, where was I at? Why? Okay, just put an X there. And then syllable, H, X, H. All right. I'll tell you what, change the first X to an I. And change that H to a Y. That should have been a Y. I'm sorry, my mistake. Change that first H to a Y. And then change the X to an E. Okay, this is the verb haya, he, yod, he. Now the he drops when it's conjugated. It drops. That's why there's no two H's there. But this is the Hebrew word that means he exists. Okay, ye means he. Yeah, go ahead.
And this is okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this not the only word that we can find that is as close to the structure as a tetragrammaton?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
How's it pronounced in modern Hebrew?
Ye. But I did make a mistake. There should be an H after the I. Put an H after the I. Yeah. This is a Hebrew word, fairly frequent in the Hebrew text. Ye. That's right. That's where the H is. It doesn't drop on this one. Okay. So here we have YHYH. Yod He. This is the Hebrew word that means he exists. And this is the syllables and the vowels that are used in that. Now, change the Y to a W, and we have the exact same word, except instead of a yod, we have a vav, and this is Yahweh, which also means he exists. And that's why I believe that this is pronounced, this is the name, how the name is pronounced, because it's almost identical to the Yod-He, Yih-Yeh. Okay. All right. All right. So that what I've just done is try to lay down a groundwork for understanding how Hebrew syllables work based on the meaning of the word and its relationship with other letters in the word and in other words as well. Okay.
That's also the same word that I've been kicking around a lot and based all of the other 4-letter words that I've been looking at. I've based everything on it. But the only difference I see is that the modern vowel point system actually has us put a letter in the beginning that probably, in my humble opinion, wouldn't have been there. But the same process, it's the only word. It's the only word that I know of that I can find that is as close to it to where we can gather the information about the structure and how many syllables are in the pronunciation of the tetragrammaton.
Right. Yes. Yes. It's a good starting point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, and then you can work from there. How certain am I that Yahweh is the pronunciation? I'd say about 70%. Okay. I'm not 100% sure about it. Because there are some changes when a word is turned into a name. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. I can't. There are a few words, though, at least based on the Masoretic text. The pronunciation changes when it's a name and not an actual noun. But that's just simply vowels. And so that could be a change over time. I don't know. Okay. Oh, am I? Oh, okay. For a minute, I thought my mic was off. Okay, that's all I had, at least prepared. So we can go from there, or you can go from there, or whatever.
Right. I just want to touch on a few, and I might differ, as most of you know. I just totally dislike the Greek language because of all the confusion that has been caused from it.
Yeah.
But I could probably blame even more on our language. So it's just so corrupted by other languages, influenced, if you will, that it's really hard for us to use the English language to actually prove anything. We can't even actually prove how many different languages have, Jeff may be able to, but I have not been able to prove just how many other languages influenced our English grammar. I mean, it's just a cesspool of all kinds of stuff. So I wanted to point out a few things. I'm going to stay away from the Yehovah thing or Yahovah thing, because last time I went over it, and if you have not seen that teaching, please send me an email and I'll attach it, but I don't want to rehash that whole thing. But we should not be using Hova. And I'll start by just going, I hope that you guys can see this. We'll be coming up with a better camera system as soon as we get the other computer system put in here. But Hova. Now, if the U has outdated and outlasted the pronunciation of the V, which we know that the Va is a very recent type of pronunciation of the letter Wa. All right, so this means ruin in Hebrew. That means ruin. Now, and if you go down the root line, you'll see that it's connected to many other things that look like they come from the root line of many different words. But if that is true, let's put the U in there. Then we're saying Hoa. So we're coming very close to, modernly speaking, ruin when we say Yahuah. And that's why think that Yahweh would have done that. I really don't. Now, as of recently, I have heard, or many people have been bringing up this thing where Yod Hey Wah Hey, and I'm going to use all English here, everyone, so that everybody can relate to what I'm trying to say. We've already seen a bunch of Hebrew structure, but let's look at some English, because a lot of you don't understand the Hebrew, and maybe I can get this across with using Yod Hey Wah Hey in English. All right. Okay, so here we have the Tetragrammaton. Now, almost every scholar on the planet, and I say almost, will agree that Yah is the short form of the Father's name. And if you go look it up, it's number 3050 in the Strongs, and you're going to see the modern Hebrew for that is the Yod and the Hey. I'm going to use ancient Hebrew because it's only the Hebrew I can write. So we have the Yod and the Hey. Okay, so what I want to point out here is that the short form of the name Yah is taken up already. The Yod and the Hey is taken up in the short form of the name. So it's a 2-syllable pronunciation. There would have to be another Hey in this tetragrammaton, which would make it not a tetragrammaton if we get Yahuah after that. It is an English grammatical impossibility. If we're using 4 letters and the first 2 are used to pronounce the first part of the name, it is an English grammatical impossibility for it to be Yah and then Yahuah. It just can't work, not even in the English. Now, many of you that have been with me for a while know that I used to use Yahuah quite frequently. But when I started doing this stuff, I came to the conclusion that it was an impossibility. And so I went back and removed all of the instances out of like 150 videos where I used it because I didn't feel it was accurate. Now, once again, Yah, the Yod and the Hey is already taken up in the pronunciation in the short form of the name. And almost every scholar on the planet will agree that Yah is the short form of the Father's name. So now let's go forward. How do we get Yahuah out of that? There's 2 syllables left. Or excuse me, there's 2 letters left. So Yah is taken up in the first part of the pronunciation, and there is no possible way that we can come up with Yahuah with 2 letters left. It's just even an English problem. Even just looking at it in the English, there's a problem there. If we look at the things around us outside, Brother Mike, if we just take a look at the writing on the wall, everyone, this is a 2-syllable pronunciation. That's what I really want to show tonight, is that it's just not a 3-syllable pronunciation, or much less a 4-letter pronunciation or syllable. So even looking at the English, we see a problem with Yahuah, Yehovah, Yehovah, Jehovah, all of it. It's just so problematic when we look at even the English and everything that Jeff has brought forth this evening. I'm just going to have to call it the way I see it here. It is a two-syllable pronunciation in my humble opinion. And I might not have been studying Hebrew as long as Jeff has, but I can tell you this, when it comes to the Hebrew language, Brad Scott and Jeff Benner have been my mentors. So I've got a little bit of their mind and my mind in this research. And what I'm seeing, even with my own little twist, even though we don't agree on every doctrinal issue, we can all three, and Brad was going to be here tonight, but he actually got caught up in New York or whatever. There was a possibility he could have made it, but he never got with me. So, I mean, we would have had three people that have been studying this stuff for decades, and that doesn't make us right. It doesn't. It doesn't make us right because we've been studying it for decades. But it does produce the evidence that all three of these men who have been studying have came to the same conclusion. Just like a lot of the people on YouTube, it can be terrible. Facebook, even though I'm on there, it can be just a bad thing. And if they're not rooted and grounded in the language history, then you can make the language his story, your own story. Instead of using the history of the Hebrew language, you can make it your own story if you don't know the Hebrew grammatical rules. And I have a lot to learn. But you know what? I have two very good mentors. And I don't think that there's anything that we couldn't come to a conclusion to if we're being led by the Spirit. It's just, like Jeff was saying, I have a little bit different view on the importance of the use of the name than Jeff does. And I do believe that the name actually is what produces the character within people. When they come to the knowledge of the name of the King, we should start to shine forth the character of Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh. It shines forth the character of who he has put inside of us. His characteristics, I didn't carry these characteristics before I came to the knowledge of the names of the Father and Son. I just really didn't. And I can sit before all of you and say that when I started praying in the name and using the name and declaring the name, that a lot of things began to change in my life and my walk. And then when I coupled all of that with Torah and the Torah, the instructions in the manual that was written by him, by Moshe, we have Torah, Sefer, Moshe, Torah, and then we have the Torah in the Torah. There's instructions in the instruction manual. When we begin to tie all of these things together, I have seen dramatic changes in the people that mess with this assembly. Whole lives are changed. There's the characteristics of our Father within us. Hallelujah. So, there was a few things that we might want to kick around. So Jeff, let's go ahead and just open up here. I've got a couple of questions from one of the sisters, and if you don't have anything else to do, or if you do, let me know now. I want to address one thing before we do that. I was questioned and asked, well, can't we just use Yah as a replacement for God? And I said, well, you can do anything you want. However, that would be El, Eloah, or Elohim. But when you take the short form of the name and you're going to use it as a title rather than a personal noun, I would say kind of unscriptural. Because we know El, Eloah, Elohim. Those are all perfectly pronounceable Hebrew words. And if for all you sticklers out there, which I am one, let's just keep it real. Let's leave the Father's name where it belongs, and let's leave all the titles where they belong. Let's do it like they did it. Because then we can't be in error if we are searching back as far as we can, and we're using these study tools, these amazing books that these people are putting together for us to learn from. We're drawing closer to the truth every day by researching these ancient Hebrew hieroglyphics. There's just no way around it. A person that just grabs onto this and some people take off running with it, and they snatch onto it, and they see it, and they start seeing things and are able to produce things that I've never seen, then that's telling me that there's something in those letters that is alive, Jeff. It's alive, and it's sharper than any two-edged sword. The English language makes everybody carrying around a butter knife. But when we look at what is in these ancient Hebrew hieroglyphics and study the Hebrew language, that butter knife becomes a sword like nothing we have ever seen. It's the only offensive tool we will ever need in battle, is this language and the truth of the scriptures. So, I mean, you can use that to supplement for that if you wish, especially in music. A lot of us do that. But I would say that to keep it in proper context, just use it where it's used. Use it for who it's used for, or who it was meant to be used for. One other thing before we start getting to a few questions. People have, over the past couple of weeks and in times past as well, have said things like, well, the Greek Septuagint is more reliable than the Hebrew nowadays. And I disagree. What people like Jeff and I are producing with the study of these books goes beyond the 1,000-year BCE. It goes beyond that. We're talking about letters that were used in the days of Moshe and prior to that. It goes beyond the Masoretic text. We know the Masoretes changed things. It's no hidden fact. Jeff will sit here and tell you. He has before. He pointed some out tonight. But we are going above and beyond the Masoretic text. And somebody asked not long ago, do we have any artifacts to prove that the ancient hieroglyphics were used? Yes. Yes. As a matter of fact, Jeff sent me a picture of one of those artifacts, and I think I still have it. And if anybody wants the proof, please email me or call me. You guys have my phone number. Let me know, and I'll send you the picture of these things that they're digging up. This isn't something that had just popped up in someone's head over the past decade. This stuff, the stones are crying out. Hallelujah. With an aleph and a lamed at that. The stones are crying out. This stuff was etched in stone. Do we want to be replaced with a stone? I don't. I've got enough on that great and awesome day to be accountable for it. And you know what? This language is the way to clean up my act. Obedience, learning of the Torah, and the language is probably the three biggest tools that we have, or that we even need, in order to sweep out our inner man and focus and take control of this outer man and get on the right path. Path also meaning Torot, the way. So, having said all of that, I think we have a few questions here. Jeff, if you want to make a comment before we do that.
I was just, when you said the stones are crying out, there's actually a book, The Stones Cry Out. And it was a fascinating read. Picked it up many, many years ago. It's about ancient inscriptions found on stones and how they cry out, you know, what they're saying. So I just found that ironic. There was one other thing I was going to mention. Now I don't remember what it was, so I guess it wasn't that important.
Okay, well, Sister Diane is sitting next to me, and she's chomping at the. Oh, I guess
Okay.
Someone that's watching has some questions. What is one of them?
The first one is address how the prophets are named and how that relates to, like you said, Jeremiah.
Okay, I would like to comment before that goes to Jeff. If you look even in your Strongs, you're going to see that like in our scriptures, for instance, when we see Elijah, we see Eliyahu. Also Jeremiah and Yesayahu, so on and so forth. But if you look even in your Strongs, those are secondary pronunciations. The first pronunciation that you're going to see is Elijah and Jeremiah, and also Yesayah. But the others are secondary. It says or Jeremiah, so on and so forth. And I've got a few reasons behind that, but go ahead and Jeff, if you want to answer that.
So the question is why are there two spellings, or I'm not sure I understand exactly what the question is.
So those that teach the prophets' names are an indication of the proper way to pronounce.
Oh,
Is correct?
okay. I think I understand what you're talking about. And a lot of people will say, if you look at these names, Eliyahu, Yirmiyahu, the Yahu is Yod He Vav, which is the first three letters of the Tetragrammaton, and they're pronounced Yahu. So doesn't that tell us that Yod He Vav He is pronounced Yahu? And however, if the Yod He Vav is at the beginning of the name, like Yehoshua or Yehoboam, can't think of any others off the top of my head, but it's a Yeho pronunciation. So again, this is depending on where the letters are positioned in the name is going to depend upon how they're pronounced. So if it's at the end of the name, it's Yahu. If it's at the beginning of the name, it's Yeho. However, this is based on the Masoretic text and the vowel pointings. Maybe originally it was Yahushua. We don't know. Or maybe it was Eliyahu, not Eliyahu. Maybe it was Eliyahu. We don't know. With certainty, we can make some guesses, educated guesses, but we just don't know for sure. All I'm going by is the Masoretic vowel pointings. And I do put a lot of weight on them. Like I said at the very beginning, I believe tradition is very important. The Jews have been speaking Hebrew for millennia. Now, a lot of people will say, yeah, but it's been a dead language since the first century. No, that's not true. Hebrew's always been spoken. When the Israelites were kicked, or the Jews were kicked out of Israel in 138 after the Bar Kokhba revolt, they were all kicked out. The Romans kicked all the Jews out. They went into other lands, and they adopted the language of the culture that they lived in, whether that be Greek or Aramaic or whatever, German. But in the synagogues and yeshivas being the schools, they would continue to speak Hebrew. They would use it in more of a, quote, religious setting. So this is really, really important because when Hebrew was their primary language, their language was based on the Hebrew language. Their philosophy was based on the Hebrew language. The example I use in my video, A History of Hebrew, is the tzitzit. Now, the word tzitzit comes from the root tzutz, which is a blossom. So tzitzit is a blossom. And it's like, well, wait a minute, what's a blossom got to do with the tzitzit? Well, if you look at the text, it actually explains it. The text says that you're to wear the tzitzit to remind you to keep the commandments. And keeping the commandments is like fruit. What does a blossom do? When you have a fruit tree, the blossom appears, and then that blossom goes away and a piece of fruit appears, whether it be an apple, pear, whatever. So the tzitzit are blossoms that produce fruit, just like a blossom on a tree. So there we have the connection. Now, when the Jews were kicked out of the land and they started speaking Greek, the equivalent Greek word is kraspadon. Kraspadon means a fringe, a decorative fringe. So now, because Greek is their primary language, their philosophy is based on that language. And so the Jews have lost this idea of the tzitzit being a blossom and have swapped it for the Greek idea of just being a decorative fringe. And so in Israel today, Jews don't connect the tzitzit with a blossom. They just don't do it, because that's not what they've been trained over the last 2,000 years based on these other languages. So a lot of Jews will have a problem with, well, that's not what it means today, but I believe that's what it meant 3,000 years ago. So anyway, does that answer the question about the Yeho and Yahu?
I would like to add to that because I've looked into that myself. Now, I was just sitting here and one of the sisters over here, we were just making tzitzits. And so she wanted to do a word study on it. And when we got to the blossom part, this is the same conclusion that we ended up coming to. The process of what would happen of a blossom.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Beautiful thing, brother. Thank you for bringing
it is. Yeah. It's,
Go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, it's interesting that you guys came to the same conclusion. I mean, it just goes to show that it's simple. And the beauty of it is you can see that verse come alive. You know, it's no longer just tzitzit on the corners of your garments, you know, which really has no value to it. But when you understand that it's the blossom and it produces fruit, you know, it comes alive.
Right. Well, here's what I've kind of been kicking around, and I think it holds a little merit. I muted myself. Sorry about that. Okay. For instance, Yod, Hey, wow, we're going to make that a big one because this is the one we're talking about. And then Shin and Ayin. Okay. Now, it's been very popular. We know that it's the what we've translated from this word is either Yehoshua or Yahushua, and many people use Yahshua. Now, I lean more towards Yahshua because anciently what would have, and this would have been the form that was used to spell when Hosea was surnamed by Moshe. This would have been what he'd done. He added a yod to Hosea's name. This is important for us to understand. So Hosea isn't the proper pronunciation of Joshua's original name before he was surnamed by Moshe. Now, this Wah has always been used as a connecting letter. In modern Hebrew, it can even be translated as and, like so-and-so and so-and-so, or, you know, it will be used as and when they transliterate it, or excuse me, when they translate it. That's in modern Hebrew. And I believe this is something that has been handed down century after century, millennia after millennia. Now, I believe what we're seeing is the short form of the name connects us to Shua, to deliverance, to the rescue. I don't believe that it was always pronounced. I believe that the alphabet was used in many different ways in its purest form, like Jeff was saying. There's a lot of things about the language that we're not really sure about, but we can look at modern Hebrew and come to some very beautiful conclusions as to how or why it all happened this way. Now, so what I'm saying is this would have been added or secured salvation. Not so much that we would pronounce the Wah in Yahshua. And so that is my view as to one of the reasons why we would see like Elijah, okay, El Maya. You know, there's so many different things, so many different possibilities concerning this. This is one of the, in my humble opinion, this is one of the most powerful letters in the alphabet. It's the picture of a tent peg or a nail, something that secures and adds us to the body. And that's what was used to drive through Yahshua's hand. He's holding the tent down. This is one of the most powerful letters in the alphabet, in my humble opinion. There's so much meaning behind it, and that's why it's been used in so many different contexts, if you will. I see you're unmuted. You want to say something, brother?
Am I unmuted? Oh,
I
What?
thought you might say something.
Yeah, actually, I find that fascinating. Now, personally, when I'm working with the pictographs and their meanings, I usually stick with just the 2-letter roots. Of, strength of the house, Ben, you mentioned earlier, the seat of the house. I don't usually in my teachings go too much into the bigger words like the 3 or 4 or 5-letter words, because there's a lot of ambiguity there. You know, you could come up with some really, really strange stuff. But personally, I do look at them. I don't teach this, but I do look at it for my own personal use, and I've come up with some real doozies, and I find this fascinating. Yahshua, Yah, who connects the salvation, the deliverance. I've never seen that before. I find that fascinating. So I do encourage people to do this. Oh yeah. The parent roots are all in there. Yeah. So yeah, no, I find that fascinating. You are aware of the Yod He Vav He, Yod the hand, the Vav the nail. Let's see, Yod the hand, He reveals, the Vav the nail, the He reveals. So the hand reveals, the nail reveals. I mean, it's, you know, it's fascinating. Satan is actually one that I found to be very apropos. Satan is a sin, which is a thorn, the tat, which is surrounds, and the noon, the seed. So the thorn that surrounds the seed. Wow, you know.
So that brings a whole new question to the table. What was Shaul's thorn in the flesh?
Actually, I've thought a lot about that, because the word sin does mean thorn, and the letter sin, which you're aware that, you know, there's the Samech, but I believe the Samech was originally the sin, and the shin was just the shin, not a shin and sin in the ancient, you know. So the sin is a thorn, and the pictograph is a picture of a thorn. So when he was talking about the thorn in his side, boom, I'm thinking Satan, you know, because he's the thorn that surrounds the seed.
Let me see if there's any more questions. And was there anything else that we needed to?
The other question that someone had was, so which would be unclean versions of the set apart name?
Well, I mean, somebody had asked what would be unclean versions of the set apart name. Let me say this. Beware of 3-syllable pronunciations. That is me. From what we've seen this evening, I would say beware of 3-letter pronunciations of the name, just to be safe. And
3-syllable.
Right, 3-syllable pronunciations of the Tetragrammaton. That would be my personal, I mean, if you can call it a warning, I'm not trying to warn anybody, but I'm trying to raise everybody's awareness as to this, I'm almost, he said 70, I'm gonna jump up about 15% and say 85% sure that this is a 2-syllable pronunciation.
Okay.
So I would stay away from most 3-syllable pronunciations, and that's me. And Jeff?
I was just wondering what you think the pronunciation is, or what you believe it to be. Or am I putting you on the spot?
No, actually you're not. I think that there has been something that we've lost in the last part of the pronunciation rather than the first. Because there's way too many scholars over the years, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, French, Italian, Hispanic. The short form of the name is just too many times agreed upon by too many people not to be Yah. So I believe, once again, that it's the latter part of the word that everybody is actually having more of a problem coming to the same conclusion with, which really doesn't surprise me. Yahweh confused the languages of 2 tribes of people for a reason. Shem, which means name, he, for the most part, wouldn't have anything to do with all of that stuff that took place at the Tower of Babel. And I believe that there was a preservation throughout time But once again, we're sifting through a few millennia trying to figure it out. But in my humble opinion, I believe that we probably have the Yah probably correct for the most part. I think that the vowel point structure has caused us to put, E's where A's go, and then we have the whole O thing. Then you got to come to this conclusion about how this is actually pronounced. Is it oo, o, o? I mean, there's so many contradictions in the latter part of the name that I feel more safely saying that Yahweh is probably the closest rendition. I feel safer that way with the evidence that I've looked at. Do I know for a fact that it's not Yahweh? No, I don't. Do I know for a fact beyond the shadow of a doubt that the I may have been anciently produced there? I kind of look at it a different way. I think that there would have been a different, almost that would be a double yod, in my humble opinion. That's just the way I look at it, anciently anyway. And that brings up another question as well. Why is there, in some instances, double letters used in these words? Yod, what were we looking at the other day? Somebody sent me 3 or 4 words that had double yods or double noons or something in a row. Why is that, Jeff? Why do we see double letters? I can't remember. I think you may have written something in either the Lexicon or one of these books about that.
The only one that comes to mind is the double plural. If you take, for example, a word like, I can't even think of one off the top of my head. Okay, let's say
the word for wine. The word for wine, brother.
Yayin.
Yeah, right.
Well, that one would just simply be a case of the root being yan, yod, noon, and then creating a new vowel or a new noun by adding a yod to it, which is somewhat common. So
that's a common thing.
Yeah. Adding the yod to form a new word. It's very frequent with the double plurals. I can't. You have to have a word that ends with a Y, and then you have to YM for the plural, the double plural. So it'd be something yim. And off the top of my head, I can't even think of one of those words without looking them up. But if you give me a little time, I could find them, or find some of these words, shoot them to me, and I'll explain why there's a double yod there.
Okay, here's one. Shield.
Okay.
This is from Yahweh's messenger out of Texas.
Okay.
Because that's our website here too. So this is one of our, and his last name is Wilson.
Oh, no kidding.
As well. Shield has Gimel Noon.
What's the word? Gimel Noon?
Yeah, for shield. Gimel.
Oh, Ganan.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, shield is usually Magen. I'm not aware of shield being Ganan. Let me look it up real quick.
He's got your. He's got your.
Well, I don't remember everything. Hold on. Let me look this word up real quick.
All right. So on page 84, if you're looking at your electronic version, it'll be page 85.
Are we talking the lexicon or the book, the smaller book? Okay.
Lexicon.
All right, hold on a second here.
It's 1060 B.
1060?
1060 B. Gimel
Okay.
Noon.
What page did you say it's on?
If you're using your electronic version, it'll be page 85, but if it's not, it'll be 84. And it says shield, a protection of an individual or community.
It's taking a minute to load. Big book. Okay, 1060. Oh, here we go. Okay, Ganon, shield, moral protection, protection of an individual or community. Okay, 1598. Let's take a look at that word. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Okay. I got it now. I see what we're looking at here. Okay. Gone is the parent root, Gimel, Nun. And then there are, you're familiar with my term, child roots. One of the most common child roots is, in order to have a verb, you must have 3 letters in Hebrew. So what they did, at least this is my opinion, is they took the two letter roots are the foundation to all other words. So if they wanted to make a verb out of that 2-letter root, they would then take the last letter and double it. They would do that all the time. And in fact, if you look at where the second letter is doubled, whether it's a Gimel Nun Nun or Aleph Lamed Lamed, you'll find that word is almost always, the definition of that word is almost always identical to the 2-letter root. So it's almost like it's one of the very first child roots that were developed out of in the Hebrew language. It's just they took the last letter of a 2-letter root and doubled it. It happens all the time. There's many, many words. Is that what you were referring to, these double letters? Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know that. So you're saying that when you see a double like that, it's for
to create a verb.
Verbiage, right?
Yeah. So this is when I was talking earlier about when I was creating this dictionary for myself. That's one of the first things I noticed, that these second letter doubles, the second letter being doubled, almost always is the same meaning as the parent root without the double letter. And that's when I first started going, that's interesting. That's got to be important. So yeah, that's very common.
Right. And for everybody out there, when the roots that he calls child, I call parent, so it doesn't confuse everybody.
Really?
And it's something I did in my own mind. I saw 2, which would be parents, and then I would see 3, which means another letter had been added, and we have a family root. So that's
family root. Yeah. Okay, so you still call the 2 letters parent roots,
right?
And then what I call child roots, you call married roots, or
right,
family
parent
roots.
I call a 2-letter root a parent root, and 3 or more a family root. That's how I've.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and so one last thing, and this is for me. I'm trying to clarify indexes, not prefixes or suffixes, but an index.
Oh, infixes. What I call them infixes.
Do you? Okay.
And I think that's the proper term, infixes.
Right.
So,
infix.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is how does it work, and what is its purpose? And because do we see that even in modern Hebrew?
Yes. They're more in verbs than nouns. They're infixes. So, like, for example, let's take the verb davar. Dalet beit resh means to speak. All right. Now, it's actually written in what's called the PL form, and it would put an infix of a yod in there. So it'd be dalet yod bet resh, diber, and that means to speak. All right. Are you aware of the 7 different forms of Hebrew verbs? The call, the hifel, the nifel, the hipal, hofel, pual, and hipal. Okay. These are where you take verb and add a letter to it in order to change it. So, for example, ra'ah, resh, aleph, hey means to see. But if I put a noon in front of it, nira, it becomes a passive, what's called the nifl form. And so it's passive, was seen. So ra'ah means to see, nira means was seen. We would translate that into English as appeared. So if you're reading a verse and it said that Yahweh appeared to Moshe, and you look up that word appeared in Strong's, it would tell you it's ra'ah means see. Okay, what Strong's doesn't tell you, it's actually in the nifl form, the passive form, and it means was seen. Okay, so the PL form places a yod in the middle. That's an infix. A pual places a vav in there, and these are the also passive forms of the verbs. So it slightly changes the meaning of the verbs. So those are the infixes. Yes, they do exist in modern Hebrew. Just as much as they do in biblical Hebrew.
And just for the record, biblical would be ancient Hebrew.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So
Actually, I would not say ancient Hebrew is biblical Hebrew. When I talk ancient Hebrew, I'm more speaking of the Hebrew before Moses. Okay, going way back to the times, of the early fathers, Eber and Shem and Noah and all of them. Their Hebrew language would have been slightly different than Moshe's.
Right. As a matter of fact, that would be Edenistic.
Yes. Yeah.
According to our partner that wrote the book,
Isaac Moseson. Yeah.
Yeah, and I might add, now this is what I've been sharing with people as of recently. Because of the Melchizedek priesthood stuff I was asking you about. Okay, it's taking me back to the 7th day, and actually the covenant is not an Abrahamic covenant. It was a covenant that was made with all mankind and all of creation on the 7th day. So it is Edenistic as well.
Yes.
As well as the language that we now call Hebrew.
Yeah.
The covenant that was made with the Hebrew man that was a descendant of Eber, they called Abram a Hebrew for that reason. This goes back to Eden. It was Edenistic. The 7th day is, of course, the word shabi'i, and its root is shaba, and its shaba means to swear an oath.
Yes, exactly.
So he swore an oath with all of creation and dropped man. So was the Sabbath made for the man, or was it? You see, if you just go back to when the covenant was made, then we become to understand that the covenant was not Abrahamic, Enochian. You can't really lay that on any of the patriarchs. It has to be laid on the first man, Adam, on the 7th day. So
yes, yeah.
That's some. I know that you never have time to really do much watching other videos and stuff like that. But
yeah, I try to.
That's why I send you, questions every now and then.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's great. I'm always happy to help. If you have a minute, we're talking about the Tower of Babel, and I came up with an interesting theory about the Tower of Babel. First of all, I do have an article on my website about the Tower of Babel, and I go into the names. If you'll notice that all of the names in the Bible prior to the Tower of Babel are all Hebrew words. It's not until after the Tower of Babel that we get foreign names. Okay, that's one thing that's interesting. But secondly, one thing that I found is the letter bet. Okay, if you take the letter bet, which is a picture of a house, we know in Hebrew that's a B sound. But there you go. Yeah. Oh, dang, are those magnets? What?
That's what I was trying to tell you, but now I've got this news. I was going to share that with you when we were done. I get these from South Africa.
Oh my gosh, those are great.
Right.
Those are awesome.
Right? I got something you need, brother.
I don't have anything to put them on. I don't have a whiteboard.
Well,
that is
it's
cool.
actually magnetic dry erase board.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, I'll tell you what. While you got that, take the noon and stick it on the left side of the bit. Okay, where? Yeah, yeah, right there. Huh? Left. Okay. Ben. All right. So we know that in Hebrew, the bet is a B and the noon is an N. Well, what I found is that in Egyptian, they use the same characters. Okay, there's the Egyptian hieroglyphs, which are, one symbol represents a word. Then there's what's called hieratic. Hieratic is an alphabet, an Egyptian alphabet, and it uses many of the same letters as Hebrew. But the B is not a B, or the bet is not a B, it's a P. P.
Yeah.
P. And the N, I don't remember, but let's say it's a T. Okay, so in Egyptian, you would, if you saw it, pronounce pot, pot. Okay, now think about it at the Tower of Babel. What if, this is just a what if scenario, if everybody used the same alphabet, but all of a sudden people were putting different pronunciations to the letters, you would not be able to understand anybody. And I think that's a possibility of what happened at the Tower of Babel.
This always happens when you're on the show. So let me go ahead and tell you what I was looking at not long ago when we were doing a teaching, a PowerPoint actually, on defending the Tetragrammaton, which is under attack, saying that it was connected to Baal worship and all these weird things. Well, they said that it was in the days of the prophets of Jeremiah, in Jeremiah's time, where all of this delusion began to happen, and they started to replace the Most High with Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, which was representative of Baal. That is the most, forgive me, stupid. It is just stupid. Okay, we can go back to the 13th century, BCE. And I believe it's the same Egyptian letters that or alphabet or whatever it is in that time. And they wrote that there were Sashu, Yod-Heh-Wah, a YHW in that language that you're talking about. This was a record kept by two separate pharaohs in the 12th, I believe it was 12th and 13th century BCE, and Sashu in the Egyptian language means wanderers. The wanderers of YHW in their own language came in there, and then they wandered out. This coming from not this stuff, but their language recorded, and that they say is their version of Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, YHW in their language.
Fascinating.
So, yeah, 13th century. That's the article I was wanting to write up, brother. Whenever you were asking for archaeological things and stuff like that, I just never had the time to actually get around to it because I was out on the road.
Well, if you got time, shoot it my way whenever you finish it.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, please do. That's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Cool.
Hallelujah. So is there any questions anybody in the room would like to ask Jeff? Or, all right, let me see. I had a few messages come in here. Let me check there, Jeff, before we get signed off. Oh. What is it? Acrostics.
Oh, acrostics.
Oh, acrostics. Yeah. Yeah. You were talking about that earlier in the email. Yeah.
Right. So just briefly explain, because I'm going to dig into this now that this brother here that came for the feast is the one that presented it to me, but I didn't know much about it. And there's a lot of, kind of weird stuff on the internet I looked at. So since you've looked at it, what in your humble opinion is its strong points concerning anything that we might want to study?
Well, an acrostic is nothing other than a poetical device for writing poetry where the first letter of each sentence begins with the next letter in the Hebrew language. So the first verse would begin with an aleph, the second letter with a bet, then a gimel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Psalm 119, I forgot how many, is it 9 or 10? the first 9 or 10 verses begins with Aleph. The next 9 or 10, I don't remember how many there were. Well, it was 100 and, how many verses? 140. So it might be 12. Actually, it might be 12. That would be a good number. So the first 12 verses begin with Aleph. The second 12 verses begin with Bet. It's just simply a form of poetry that the Hebrews used when writing songs. Its significance is, well, one thing, Psalm 145 shows us that the Masoretic text is missing a whole verse. Yeah, one whole verse. In fact, I have a video on my YouTube channel where I actually show this. It's an acrostic psalm, Psalm 145. The first one begins with Aleph, then Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Hed, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, and then it goes to Samech. It skips the Nun. So it's missing a whole verse that begins with the letter Nun. And for a long time, we wondered why. And so people came up with ideas. Well, they didn't do that because the letter Nun represents this, so they didn't want to put that verse in there. You know, they just come up with off the wall. The Septuagint actually has it. The Septuagint has always had the missing verse that began with the letter Nun. Of course, you got to take the Greek, translate it into Hebrew, and voila, there's the Nun. Then when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, we found out in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I have pictures of it in the video that I'm talking about. Boom, there's the verse with the letter Nun. It's right there in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So that's kind of cool that we know the verse is missing because it's missing the verse that begins with the letter Nun. Another thing too, and I can't remember which, a lot of these acrostics will use words related to that letter. In Proverbs, I think it's the Proverbs about the woman, Proverbs 31. Yeah, Proverbs 31 woman, they say. Yeah, Proverbs 31. The first letter is an Aleph, and the words in that are going to be related to that Aleph. When you get to the Pei, the verse that begins with the Pei, it actually talks about the mouth, and the Pei is the letter is a picture of a mouth. So this actually can help us in a little bit of a way to understand those pictographs, because those words are going to be based, the words in that verse are going to be based on that letter.
In the book of Esther.
How about in the book of Esther, Brother Joe S.?
Okay, what about the book of Esther?
There's a supposedly raised type of acrostic with raised letters in there that actually spell out the tetragrammaton.
Okay, when you say raised letters, do you mean like lifted up from the normal position?
Yes.
Okay. There's actually a lot of that in the Hebrew, the Masoretic text. For example, Bereshit, the bet, I think, is a small bet. You have letters that are raised, that are reversed. These, in the Talmud, they talk about these and they explain what they all are and why they're there. Now, they believe that was in the original Torah that God gave to Moshe and in the original Esther. However, I don't believe that because none of the Dead Sea Scrolls have any of these raised letters, larger letters, reversed letters. They just don't exist. I think that they were inserted into the text as teaching tools by the teachers, the scribes. They would have raised this letter like the Shema. In the Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. The very first letter is a shin, or no, shin. Oh, the last letter of the first word is an ayin. Shema is an ayin, and that ayin is large. The very last letter is a dalet, and it's very large. So you have this Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. The ayin is large, the dalet is large. If you take those two large letters and put together, you have ed, which is the word for witness. So this verse is a witness to Yisrael. In fact, all Jews are supposed to say this before they die. You know, if they're dying, then they should be speaking the Shema. And it's a witness to Israel. And so the ayin and the dalet are raised because it's a witness. I believe that was just done by a scribe at some point, and they got carried on. Now, as far as Esther specifically, I'm not familiar with the passage or the actual Yod He Vav He in that, but I believe a scribe would have done that.
Okay, thank you.
It's much like the inverted nuns that we read about.
Yes.
Or that we see.
Same thing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that they do with that, and they're really cool. I mean, when you read the teachings of why they're there, I mean, it's fascinating. They're great teaching tools, you know. But I just don't believe it was in the original text.
Well, right. Of course, there's a lot of things in our mind that are not original, right, Jeff?
Not mine.
Right.
Not mine.
And one last question here was, how accurate or how helpful is the Aleppo and Leningrad Codex to decoding ancient pictograph versus Dead Sea Scrolls? Well, my personal answer to that would be they don't hold the stick to it, but that's me.
I agree.
Right. You might as well just abort mission and start on a whole new rabbit trail, because if we're taking our eyes off of the ancient text or the ancient alphabet in order to try to gather information, I feel it's just basically a waste of time. Let's get these concrete definitions and letters in our mind and the meaning of them before we begin to go back up, back downstream from it.
Yeah, let me make a couple comments about Masoretic text versus the Dead Sea Scrolls. I have heard from people that say that there are 30,000 differences between the different Masoretic texts. And I've also heard people say that all the Masoretic texts are identical, and they're all identical to the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we have the two extremes, okay? One extreme is there's many different Masoretic texts. There's the Ben Asher text, the Ben Naphtali text, there's the Aleppo Codex, the Leningrad Codex. So we have a lot of different Masoretic texts. So some people will say there's 30,000 differences between them, and some will say they're identical. Well, it's actually something in between. When it comes to the consonants, they're all identical. All the Masoretic texts are exactly the same. The only differences are in the vowel pointings. One might have a hirek, an I, and another one might have a cholam, an O sound. So yes, there's a lot of differences in the Masoretic text when it comes to the vowel pointings, but not to the consonants. When it comes to the Dead Sea Scrolls, for the most part, the Masoretic text is almost identical to the Dead Sea Scrolls, with the exception of the Vav and the Yod and the Hey, in some cases, that are added in, that are there in the Dead Sea Scrolls, but removed in the Masoretic text. For example, if I want to say your hand is Yad, right? Yad is hand, and your is Cha, Yad Cha. Now, in the modern Hebrew or in the Hebrew Bible, that's spelled Yod Dalet Kaf, Yad Cha, Yod Dalet Kaf, your hand. But in the Masoretic text, that suffix, Cha suffix, is Kaf He. Okay? And that's to distinguish between the masculine and the feminine, because if it's masculine, it's Kaf He. If it's feminine, it's just Kaf. But in the Hebrew Bible, the Masoretic Hebrew Bible, it's just Kaf. And it could be a Patach, a kamatz vowel after it, or there's a shva after it. If there's a shva, it's feminine. If it's a kamatz, it's masculine. So it's spelled the same with the consonants, whether it's masculine or feminine, you. But in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's not. There's a hey there. So with the exception of the what's called the matris lectionis, the aleph, the hey, the vav, and the yod that are used as vowels, then when they're removed out of the Dead Sea Scrolls and placed, they're removed out of the Masoretic text. Other than that, they're pretty much identical. So they're, I do use the Masoretic text, of course, and I try and use the Dead Sea Scrolls as much as I can. Unfortunately, even after how many years has it been now? Almost 80 years, we still don't have access to all of the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're still not available to us. They're still hoarding them, a lot of them.
Darn liberal.
Yeah. I think they need to make a movie about the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, it would be it's the espionage, the stealing, the buying of. I don't know if you know the story of how they first found the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was an article in the New York Times. It was an ad saying, "Hey, we've got some scrolls. Anybody want to buy them? We'll sell them for $10,000." And this guy from Israel was in New York at the time. He's going, "Oh my gosh." So he calls up. He says, "Hey, Israel, I need some money." So they shipped him the money, and he went and bought these scrolls, and took them to Israel. And those were the first scrolls. They weren't even found in the cave yet. that came later. But anyway.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I would like to cover before we end for this evening. A lot of people that are, trying to lean towards the Greek stuff. Jeff's work corrects a lot of those instances where the yod, especially the yod. I know in your ancient Hebrew Torah, you put all the yods back where they belong and all that. So whenever you begin to use the ancient Hebrew lexicon, you see a lot of those corrections as well.
Yes, I put those in the lexicon. Yeah.
Right, and in so doing, we are able to surpass the LXX. I'm sorry. I mean, you can stick to the Greek as long as you want, but like I've been telling everybody as of lately, we need to get rid of our big, huge Greek fat mindset, because in the end, we're not going to a big fat Greek wedding. We're not.
And Yeshua didn't wear a toga. He wore a talit.
I'm going to use that one, Jeff.
Okay.
Right. I mean, who in their right mind would not want to abort Greek theology and that language to move closer to understanding the one who has spoken to us from the Shemaim?
Mm-hmm.
And if me, I'm an ex-convict. I was dirt, the lowest of the lowest. If Yahweh can do a work in me, and he can have me on a road to obedience and a road to understanding, let me tell you something. Nobody watching this and nobody in the room has an excuse. They don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard them all.
Yep.
No. It's actually very simple. You just have to give up a bunch of stuff that you like, that you can't take in with you anyway.
Yeah.
So, let's get back to the outhouse and the roof over your head and a fireplace and food that you've grown on your own. Yeah. Let's get back to that.
What Brad calls agrobiolinguistics.
Biological linguistics, yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful, that word that he came up with. It very well describes Hebrew. Yeah.
Right. Well, Jeff, I'm going to eat.
Okay. It's been fun. Thanks for the invite. Had a good time.
Yeah, I love you, brother. And
you too.
And stay on, because I got a few personal things I want to talk about real quick. And so everybody, please excuse us for starting late, but like I said, he was having a problem getting logged in. And so if you have any prayer requests or anything, please email them to me. We will all pray for you. Send me a text message, whatever you need to do. And let's go ahead and pray out. Great King, our Melech Tzaddik, we worship you and we thank you so much for all of this information this evening that was produced. And we pray that no one was offended by it. But we also pray that at the same time, it will give others a reason to look deeper into the pronunciation of your great name, who all of us are just trying to exalt. So bless us with understanding that comes from you and from the deepest parts of our innermost self. These rivers of living water may flow through your name, by your name, to your name. Hallelujah. Father, we thank you so very much for everything that you bless us with. And I want to just pray added blessings upon Brother Jeff and his household and his family. And we just pray that you would continue to keep that desire burning in his heart to dig up all of these things that he's sharing with all of us. We want to thank you so much for that as well. And as we begin to depart from this program, let us not depart from your presence. And let each and every day just be a day that draws us near to you, Father, for that is our desire. We give you the praise and the honor and the glory and the blessings due to you. In the precious name of Yahshua. Hallelujah. Till next week, everybody, may Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh's face shine upon you and show favor to you. May Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you a shalom.